the power to print all the money they wanted, a privately owned bank. And the Federal Reserve Act itself is an amazing act. It's an act of total monopoly because every word in it, first of all the money that the bankers can print becomes an obligation of the U.S. government, which means the U.S. taxpayer. Second, the stockholders of this private bank included in the legislation that no Federal Reserve Bank stock could ever be bought or sold on any exchange in the world. So in other words, the initial purchasers would own it in perpetuity, which is what happened because the Rothschilds, Warburgs, and Schiffs all bought the original stock in 1914 and have owned it ever since. And they've put it into foundations, so it can never be touched. And these foundations are the real government of the United States, Rockefeller Foundation. Nearly all of your major legislation in the United States is prepared by these foundations. And they submit it to Congress, and of course they have enormous staffs and billions of dollars. So they bring the legislation before Congress. And it's impeccable. It's researched and it's phrased and everything is done just right. And so of course the Congress accepts it. And they look around and they say, is anybody objected to any of this? And of course there's total silence. Nobody objects. So it becomes law. That's why you have laws constantly passed by Congress which are actively opposed by 85% of the American people. Almost everything that's done in Washington is opposed by 85% of the American people. So you have government by 15%, government by elites. And they're not even Americans. These are international elitists. They have no allegiance whatsoever to the United States, just like your Canadian legislatures have no allegiance to you. They have no allegiance to Canada. They're part of the international elite. But of course they don't say this publicly, and the press hails them all as great patriots and dedicated people, selfless individuals. They love that word selfless. Imagine, all your legislators are selfless. They never have a selfish bone in their body because they're working for you. They want to give you things. And of course the only purpose they have is to rob you. Not only you, but all 6 billion people in the world, because it's a government of robbery. So you have what you call the new economy in the United States, and probably Canada too. And the new economy is simply people working and creating and producing in spite of everything the robbers can do to them. Everything that's accomplished in this country is accomplished in spite of the foundations, in spite of the bankers. People have to work harder to pay the interest, but they do that. They rise to the challenge. And so they've created a new economy, an economy of enormous prosperity. And the bankers don't like it because the most influential financial reporter on television in the States is Louis Rickheiser, Wall Street Week, which is a very honored program, been on for many years. So a couple of months ago, I was watching Wall Street Week, and Louis Rickheiser had some Wall Street people on. And so he said, well, what do you think about what's going on? That the stock market was dropping, you know. In fact, my stocks were dropping $10,000 a week. Just week after week, I was watching my little nest egg dwindle away, you know. And but I knew what was going on, and I couldn't do anything about it. I may eventually sue Alan Greenspan, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, for robbing me, because he robbed me. I mean, I saw $170,000 in stock vanish into thin air. And the stocks themselves were perfectly good. Every one of these companies was actually doing well. The economy was doing well. And Clinton, of course, was busy in the Oval Office. I mean, he wasn't interfering with any of this, you see. They said, listen, Bill, if you'll stay out of your way, you can have all the interns you want. And it sounded good to him, and that's what he did. No, Clinton is the invisible president, believe it or not. He has absolutely no political influence whatsoever. And he has a crew in Washington. There was an FBI agent named Gary Aldrich who was stationed there. He was there during the Bush administration, which was a very staid and proper, even stuffy administration. Then in come the Clintons, a bunch of left-wing loonies, homosexuals, and these people were right out of the 1960s. They were absolutely nuts. Dope addicts, you name it. None of them could pass clearance. Most of the Clinton White House staff has never been approved by the FBI. They have no security clearance. They should be arrested when they come to work. So Gary Aldrich wrote a best-selling book about this. He told how Hillary, when Christmas came, Hillary was decorating the Christmas trees with penises and condoms and so forth. And I mean, these people believe in what they're doing. They are the real revolutionaries because they're totally degenerate and totally insane. And I don't mean to impugn anybody, but unfortunately, that's what they are. And Gary Aldrich was horrified at these people. And so the whole Clinton spin allied to denounce Gary Aldrich, that he was really a secret Republican and that he was trying to destroy the Clinton administration. Whenever anybody criticizes Clinton, they call him a Clinton hater. In other words, if you find any fault with Clinton, you must be eaten up with envy and hatred of this wonderful person who's our president, you know. Yeah. And so Clinton hatred is supposed to be the big thing in the United States. But, well, he'll be long gone because, you see, the powers that be decided to get rid of him, and that's really what Greenspan has been doing. They want to get Clinton and Gore out and put in this very proper Republican administration again. It was the same deal that they did in 1980 with Reagan. They simply totally sabotaged Jimmy Carter. They put him on grease skids and ran him right out of Washington. And they're doing the same with Gore. Every reporter in the United States knows that Gore is gone, that he hasn't got the chance of a snowball in hell. And so it's Bush all the way. This is the way they like unanimity. They like monolithic government. They don't want opposition. So they're going to get rid of Clinton and his gang of bums and put in a very sedate, a nice first lady who has never slept with anybody but her husband, and the whole bit. We're going back to morals. Meanwhile, the same bankers will be running everything just as they did, and doing everything they want. But at least Bush will not do what Reagan will do. What Reagan did, he brought in this bunch of socialists who called themselves conservatives, or neoconservatives. But Bush is bringing in the old CIA crowd. Remember, Bush Sr. was head of the CIA and was a CIA operative all of his life. That's the only job he ever had, really. He had these ships that were CIA passenger ships and everything else, supply ships. And of course, they sabotaged the Bay of Pigs to ensure that Castro was about to fall in Cuba. He was gone. So they mounted an emergency the CIA mounted an emergency rescue operation to save Castro, called the Bay of Pigs. And of course, all of Castro's opposition came out and fought him because they were assured that planes were coming from the United States and they would blow the Castro forces off the map. So when they went out and were fighting on the beaches, they looked up, there were no planes. No planes ever came. So of course, Castro's opposition was totally wiped out, and he's been in power ever since. It was the same way that Bush did with Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They said, we've got to get rid of this new Hitler. Saddam is the new Hitler, we've got to get rid of him. So what happened? Saddam is still in power because he and Bush were partners in a number of enterprises. Saddam, by the way, is one of the wealthiest men in the world. I mean, he's a big player. And he helps keep the price of oil up. See, people are complaining about the price of gasoline. They don't realize that Saddam is doing that. Because if we had the Iraq production coming into this country, gas would be 25 cents a gallon. And so they can't have that. So they keep Saddam in power. And they did the same thing in Iraq. They got rid of all of Saddam's opposition because when the United States attacked Iraq, then obviously every Iraq patriot had to support Saddam Hussein. So he's in for life. And that's the way things are done. You always support the opposition so you can control it. So we own Saddam Hussein. He is not a monster that the press claims. And we support Castro. We've kept Castro in power for 40 years. And this is the way this operates. Well, I mention this because the senior Bush, as head of the CIA, oversaw all these things. So what you're going to have under W, the new president, will be a CIA operation. which is the same as in Russia, you have the KGB running the state.